Thank you for tuning in for this edition of Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali. I am Attorney Zulu Ali with the Justice Watch crew. Rosa Nunez, Michael Bilal Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Andrea Rodeman. This week, like every week, we'll be discussing critical legal and social justice issues that are impacting our community. Uh, so today, our subject is actually the Black History Month finale. I think this is obviously the shortest month of the year. So the 28th will be the end of the month. So I thought that we would at least spend this time kind of, talking a little bit about the Black History Month. And, I guess this is kind of like the overview or the finale with regards to most of our other broadcasts. I know we had, a couple of pre-recorded broadcasts on Malcolm X. We had pre-recorded on many different topics over the
Mhm.
last few weeks. And so this is kind of like and they give us, and I know this is cliche, but obviously they give us the shortest month of the year. Unfortunately. But I mean, I think I'm just going to rehash what is at least what is Black History Month and how we got here. It began in 1926 when historian Carter G. Woodson and the Association for the Study of the Negro Life and History announced the second week of February to be Negro History Month. This week was chosen because it coincided with the birthday of Abraham Lincoln on February 12th and that of Frederick Douglass on February the 14th, both of which Black communities have celebrated for some time, at least at that particular time. Then around 1970, Black educators and Black students at Kent State University proposed Black History Month back in February of 1969. The first celebration of Black History Month took place at Kent State a year later, and from January the 2nd to February the 28th, 1970. 6 years later, Black History Month was being celebrated all across the country in educational institutions and centers of Black culture and community centers, both great and small, when President Gerald Ford recognized Black History Month in 1976 during the celebration of the United States bicentennial. He urged the Americans to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in their every area of endeavor throughout our history. All right. So let's talk. What does I'm going to begin with you, Rosa? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good. That sounds good.
Awesome.
So what does Black History Month mean to you, Rosa?
I think that it's really a time where, we celebrate Black excellence, the history of Black excellence throughout, and Black leadership this entire month. I think for myself is really a time of reflection in the sense of acknowledging my own privilege as a Latina, a light skinned Latina. Yeah, and that's what it means to me. It's just a time of celebrating Black excellence, but also taking a step back and realizing that, there's people out there that the system has failed them and continues to fail them.
Mm, right. What about you, bro?
Hmm. um, I think it actually, to me, I look at it as a time to be able to um, educate and open up the eyes of those who do not know the historical role that we have played all around the world in general, as far as from everything from inventions to acting and science and math and everything else. And I think it's a time where we'll be able to educate those who have not been educated. And I often ran across individuals saying, dang, I did not even know that after seeing something on social media or someone explaining some. So I think it's a point or a period in time where we are able to bring um, bring back up greatness of individuals who had in the past that have made great contributions to the world,
Hmm.
and to kind of shine that light on them, to give them respect and give them honor for just leading the path.
Right. Well, I think when I think about Black History Month, I think that we have to. There's two issues that come to mind. On one hand, the one issue that comes to mind is the fact that, and I know Morgan Freeman had made the statement that Black history is American history,
Mm,
right? And so and I think that uh how do we reconcile with the fact that we choose the shortest month of the year as a way of celebrating the centuries of contributions from the very beginning, um for African Americans. That's the first thing that actually comes to my mind when we talk about the issue of Black History Month. But then also the second thing I think about with the issue of Black History Month is the fact that when we typically the celebration of Black History Month in all reality is more of a celebration of Black people celebrating our own history as opposed to the country being involved in the celebration of the history
mm,
of African Americans. So although it is important, and you're right, it's important for everybody to know our accomplishments, by what do we really do as a country to make sure that it is something that is exposed to all citizens as opposed to just being exposed to us. I mean, we take it, we run with it, and obviously there's a lot of things that we do during the month to celebrate ourselves.
mhm,
And although it is uh, I guess, supposedly something that is recognized as from a national perspective, how does it really, how does it really help, or what is it that we should do, um, if anything, to make sure that this is something that is celebrated, throughout the country, as opposed to something that we just celebrate ourselves.
mhm,
What say you, Rosa?
I mean, I think it's like what Bilal was saying, educating others and really uplifting Black voices and Black owned businesses and Black owned organizations that just further expose the impact that Black people have had on the foundation of this country,
Mm-hmm.
because it was built by their labor.
Mm-hmm.
It was built by them. And I
mm,
think just, joining and it just further highlighting Black voices in all aspects of life,
Mm-hmm.
but also, just further amplifying the message that it shouldn't just be a month.
Mm-hmm.
It should be the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
And
mm,
why do we only have a month? And why do we only have a month where it's popular to say hashtag Black History Month, but during the other months of the year, it's like, well, it's not Black History Month.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's to me, it's just a lot of, it just gets me thinking a lot.
Yeah,
mm,
it's somewhat of a degree. The fluff that goes along with it. It's kind of like, the it's too easy to please us.
mm.
You know
Mm,
what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just like we happy about Juneteenth, which we should be happy, but
yeah,
and so in other words, to appease us, it only takes them giving us a day.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I mean, so you're gonna tell me you're gonna make sure you give them a day where they can cook out, huh?
yeah,
mm,
And is that, you know what I mean? And then you're gonna be cool with that.
yeah,
You see what I mean? So,
mm,
so for me, I think that, um, you know, we should want much more
mhm,
instead of, other than just basically a time to recognize each other. I know that now, during the show, we're definitely going to start talking about the critical race theory situation,
mm,
and how the critical race theory is,
mm,
you know, in is should it be taught in schools, and if so, you know,
mm.
how should it be taught?
Hmm.
You thinking about that one?
No, I
Uh-huh.
was somewhere else, but no, I
But
just
go where you went, and then we'll come back if we
yeah,
need
yeah.
to.
I just think, just, going on what you and Rosa was just saying in terms of
Mm,
how do we, how do we get more, and I
mm,
don't, I think it's okay. We got the shortest one. I think we should make the best out of it in this
mm,
sense, is that I think it should be expanded to some of these textbooks in the schools
mm,
in terms of um, just 1 month. But if it's in these textbooks in the school, then it's all year round
mm,
in a sense that um, I find it as an educational point, not just in February, but all year round when I talk to youth and I talk to them and I tell them about, who invented the phone or who invented the street light or who invented the pencil sharpener, so forth and so on. And in that, they are able to see greatness within themselves because for so
mm,
long they has been taught that someone that looks like them
mm,
has not done anything to achieve anything in this world. And
mm,
so when you put a face on some of these great inventions and say, hey, this world would not go around without this, it shows them that they have the capability to do great things.
mm,
But when you don't show them that somebody that reflects them, that have done something that has made just great contributions,
mm.
then they're limited to their ability to dream. But when you show them that, their dreams are bigger and their accomplishment get bigger. And so I think that when we begin to put this type of stuff in these educational curriculums, saying that Carter G. Woodson did this or did that, instead of just the typical Martin and that's not to take away from Martin. That's not to take away from Malcolm or none of them because I think that they're very critical. But
Mm.
I think that when we begin to put those things in the textbook, then we can see Black history all year round because it's taught in the educational curriculum.
My thing is that basically, for me, I think that there's a limit on because I mean I think that we have two issues. One issue is exposing the bigger society or the majority society to, the African American experience and our contributions. And then on the second hand, we have to also utilize the month or the time to also expose ourselves as African Americans to our accomplishments and
Mm,
what we've done. But I think that when we talk about moving towards the critical race theory, because ultimately, what is the end goal? I think that we believe that the end goal is that if you're exposing young black men and women to the excellence or the history of the excellence that African Americans have had in this country, then we're going to see, some degree of more excellence, right? And
mhm,
and 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 overcoming a lot of the issues that are impacting our communities due to our experiences in history, right?
mhm,
Mhm.
But on the other hand, I look at it from another perspective. I think that one of the primary issues that we have to expose during this month is not, is or this month or just period is we have to expose them to a tradition and a culture.
mhm,
And the tradition and the culture is more important than the individuals that are these individual accomplishments. And I tell you, this is what I mean by that. Um, I think, I just recently last week I went to Broward College
mhm,
in Florida to speak on Black History Month and speak about, Malcolm X, right?
mhm,
And it was very interesting because he's one of the obviously a very polarizing figure, but a very complicated person. And the thing that I've always enjoyed when it comes to talking about Malcolm is not his accomplishments. The difference about Malcolm as opposed to some other um, individual that we have in American history is who he was as a person.
mhm,
And Malcolm was a very disciplined person.
mhm,
He was the ultimate family man. He was
mhm,
the ultimate husband, father, um, again, very disciplined and very just a good example of a man,
Mm-hmm.
right? So one of the things that I think that we have to begin to start focusing on in this month or at any other month is finding the best of our tradition and culture and focusing on culture. Because if you get a book and all in your book is just the names of individuals that did all these particular accomplishments, I think that basically that only sends a very limited message,
Mm.
because culture and tradition is not based upon individual accomplishments.
Gotcha.
Culture and tradition is based upon the collective,
Mm.
right? And so the tradition that we have to begin to start embracing is a tradition of where we were before we started having the huge problems.
Gotcha.
In other words, what about the time period in of the black family um before integration?
Mm.
What was the number of the what was the percentage of the black man in the home before integration?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to teach a young man, I mean, it doesn't matter what, for me, when I was growing up, the the most influential thing to me were watching men being men.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes those men were janitors. Sometimes those men were truck drivers. Sometimes those men were carpenters. Sometimes those men were painters. Sometimes those men were school teachers. Sometimes those men they did all kinds of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
But the most impressive thing was the fact that they they did what they were supposed to do,
Correct.
right? Being a man, doing your job, taking care of your family, and being a great example, not only for your own children, but those around you. Those are the things that we need to see.
Mm-hmm.
Not what's in a book, but we need to highlight those things during Black History Month. I mean, I have a lot of respect, and it's really huge to look at historical figures and the things that they've done.
Mm-hmm.
What's also important is, when do we begin to start giving the roses and the flowers to the men who do what they're supposed to every day,
Yeah. Correct.
right? And
Yeah.
oftentimes we celebrate people who don't need to be celebrated, right? My thing is, okay, maybe I love music, right? Oh man, I love music. I love movies. I love comedy. I love all of that. But why am I going to give the lifetime achievement award to somebody, or the image award to somebody because they sold more records than somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me
Yeah.
that you can be a terrible human being, you can not take care of your family, you can, do all kinds of things in your life, but just because you can write a song and make a hit and sell a lot of records, then I should celebrate you,
Mm.
right? And if we continue to go on that path of celebrating people without understanding values, cultural values is the most important thing in history, in your culture. Your value.
Mm.
What are your values, right?
Yeah.
Not what do you do, but who are you, right?
Yeah.
And we don't talk about those cultural values. You know what I mean? So when I was a young man and I was growing up, that's the conversation that I had as a young man. Is that what is the value? What's the most important thing? Respecting yourself, respecting your elders,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those sort of things are important. How are you going to how do you expect people to respect you when you don't even respect yourself?
Correct.
Huh? How do you do that? And
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that we need to focus on. Again, we're not the people, but what did they do? Now,
Yeah.
if I tell you that basically somebody created the stoplight, that's important. But who created it and what type of man was he?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So in other
Yeah.
words,
Yeah.
just because I did something, I mean, am I going to emulate that? I mean, there's a lot of people
Mhm.
that make a lot of money. If I'm going to go out here and just say so and so was the first black millionaire,
Mhm.
right? You know, there's drug dealers that got millions of dollars, right?
Mhm.
There's pimps that got millions of dollars. There's pimps and drug dealers that got, that drive Bentleys.
Mhm.
But I would rather them to understand the importance of the guy who works as the manager at such and such store, who is an upstanding guy and who is taking care of his situation.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
They don't not ultimately, and that's where the problem comes by, because honestly, we got black billionaires.
Mhm.
We got black millionaires, right?
Yeah.
But to the degree that we have this, and we also have very powerful buying power, right, as a community. But how does that translate into our community getting, becoming better as it relates to our young man and the
Mhm.
quality of life that we have?
Yeah.
Now, I get it. We have a lot of issues. Now, does Black History Month, how does that impact the challenges that we have as a people? And much of the challenges that we have as a people, um, is something that obviously we still continue to, and which people say that has a huge impact on what is going on in our communities and what is going on in our society, right? And
Mhm.
I agree 110%. We got serious issues about the way that the majority of the society is treating us, right?
Mhm.
But I have news for you, and this might be some news that maybe people just don't want to hear from me, and maybe it's not going to be a popular thing that I'm going to say, but can nobody give you your freedom?
Mhm.
You understand?
Yep.
And so for me, I think that one of the things that we have to focus on is, how do we internally, until we internally address how we deal with things within our culture, that being the cultural values, that being, like, for example, when we study Malcolm, what do we say about Malcolm? What do you really know about Malcolm? People talk about Malcolm, but they don't know nothing about him.
Mhm.
What do they say? If you go right now, you say, hey, like, you see his picture on all the posters and
Yeah.
say, hey, tell me, how did Malcolm impact you? What are they going to say? They like what he said in the
Mhm.
speech. He said not to turn the other
Yeah.
cheek. Malcolm had a significant impact on people, uh, on his people,
Mhm.
long after his passing.
Yeah.
He had an impact on people who read his autobiography. But when you read his autobiography, it's not because he marched.
Mm-mm.
It's not because of his fiery speeches. His impact was because of the life that he lived,
Exactly.
right?
Mhm.
And he's touching people at the very bottom of the barrel.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What are we what's going on? Who had the biggest impact on those who needed that? On a young man who can say, let me look at somebody and look at him and say how I can translate that to my life.
Mhm.
And if you really are not doing analysis of his life and you follow him, it's going to impact your faith,
Yeah.
the way you look at people, the way you look at yourself, and the man that you are. Because it's the man he was,
Mhm.
right? And so, for me, I think that when we talk about the critical race theory and teaching critical race theory in schools, then I think that's really important, because what it does is it teaches that race is a social construct,
Yeah.
and it also and it's critical race theory. And I'm again, don't start writing me, emailing me, and sending me letters and dogging me out and everything else. But I'm not against the critical race theory, but my thing is, if you're teaching critical race theory, what is it going to be? And you know what? If I was a betting man, I'm going to say it's going to have very little to do with black folks.
Most definitely.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because this is the thing: is that it's going to be it's actually a legal theory. It began in law schools in Harvard Law School as it's called critical legal studies. Um, and that's how it actually began. And it actually by Harvard law professor Derek Bell back in the 1970s, right, and some other people as well. But and it's very complicated. And then the question is, what are you going to teach? When you say critical race theory, people say, well, what do you? And you ask the average, okay, so how does that look in real time? If I say, okay, yeah, I'm going to start teaching critical race theory in schools, what does that really look like?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to teach? You're going to teach the concept that race is social construct, huh?
I mean, it would seem so. That's what, you know, usually taught, and that race itself contributes to the marginalization of people of color in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And oppression is systematic.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, so where we go for that? How does that? I mean, what does it look like? I mean, a whole curriculum of critical race theory. What does it actually look like in real time, and how does it, you know, uh, how does it really change our thought process? Now, clearly, teaching what teaching a it depends on it's even like black studies or even
Mm-hmm.
even black history. A lot of it's going to depend on what does the curriculum
Yeah.
look like, because I mean, you can water it down, but the truth is the most important thing. See, that's the reality
Yeah.
of
That's
it.
the reality
Is
of it.
teaching Are you going to teach the
Truth.
truth?
Yeah.
Now, it's one thing to show a picture of Dr. King behind the pulpit talking about he has a dream. I love Dr. King, right? And I love what he did. I mean, I think he's one of the most significant um, figure in the in civil rights in this country.
Yeah.
Period. But on the other hand, what do you really need to see? What you need to see is, are you going to show a picture of Emmett Till in the casket after he was brutally beat and killed?
Mm-mm.
Are we going to show that?
No.
Are we going to show the lynching of people that was done on a systematic way in American history? Are we going to show that?
No,
So
but it gets me thinking in a way,
yeah, because see, this
because
is
when
the
they teach about the Holocaust,
right,
you do see those images.
right. And it's important because then what you do is then you don't understand when you see, if you're only showing, are you trying to convince people that you're excellent? Well, heck, I know I'm excellent.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? A lot of Bill Cosby would have probably been considered excellent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you see what I mean? How does that impact anything else? I mean, he's accomplished, right? That's not what we need to do. Is we need to show the truth. If we're trying to show other people, how are we going to really show that truth? Are we going to show dogs and hoses,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are we going to show uh, images of George Floyd, right? You see
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not, and that's just the way I feel. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that I'm going to change the way, um, you know, you feel about black folks by showing black people did a lot in this country.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, and it's a very and racism in America is a very complicated situation. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And it's
Yeah.
very complicated because you know a lot of people may feel some sort of way about, are you trying to make me feel guilty for something that I never did?
Mhm.
Is that how we do it?
Yeah.
Huh? I mean, if
Yeah.
you're saying, if someone says, you know what, I don't have no problem. I mean, everybody has biases,
Yeah.
no matter who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
But the reality of it is, is that how we go about it? Do I go about it by um, showing someone my humanity, or trying to prove to you that I'm a human being,
Hmm.
or to prove to you that I've been treated, that we get treated a certain way, right? Am I going to go on that? Am I going to exert my energy doing that? I don't know. Talk to me.
Hmm.
I can see how you. I can see how critical race theory in itself is very desensitized to the actual suffering and the actual carnage that happened, with Black Americans.
Hmm.
And it gets us used to that image of, oh, well, they struggled,
Hmm.
they're not struggling.
Right.
Yeah.
That happened in the past. It's not happening now.
Hmm.
And that's very dangerous.
Hmm.
Yeah. But it also goes back to what you said and whether or not it's going to be a truth implemented into it. And considering the fact, looking over the course of history and what has been implemented in schools so far, you can you can almost believe that the truth is not going to be exposed inside of the curriculum because of, I guess you can say, because of what they feel might be the backlash behind it. Like Rosa said, you can take images from the Holocaust and you can show that, and people would begin to, I guess you could say, feel some degree of sympathy and passion for what happened. Like, I'm sorry, or sorrow for that. But then
Mm-hmm.
you can't take something like Emmett Till and put that in the book and expect people to say, oh, in other words, they think it might exaggerate, I guess you can say, a sense of anger,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah, to show, where does this anger come from? You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why is it that, I mean, the reality of it is, I mean, I've seen people beat that way within the last 2 or 3 weeks. As far as like disfigurement of their faces and
Hmm.
mistreated, and subjected to, inhumane treatment just based upon the way that they look or the color of their skin, right? But I think that on the other end of the spectrum, I have a completely different paradigm and outlook as to um, racism. And my paradigm and my outlook does not come from a place of where I believe that I'm hated. I mean, I think my outlook comes from a place of people are fearful,
Hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, that fear is not a matter of fear of what you will do, but the fear of maybe the fear of what you would do, but what you would become. A lot of
Yeah.
times that becomes the fear, because now are you going to teach critical race theory, and it's just going to create a lot of animosity in the classroom when you begin to start showing images of the way people were treated,
Mm.
right? is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is that is that part of why there's, what's going on in Florida and some other places where they are not saying, hey, we ain't having that? You see what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You see, and then the thing is, do I really want, on one hand, who do you want? The real question about critical race theory is going to be who's teaching it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's really what's going. I mean, it's like I said, as complicated as race is. Can you really put it inside of a book and expect someone who happens to be allowed to teach the subject, to teach it in a way that's going to garner um, the type of response and a type of healing that we
Hmm.
expect?
Or balance.
Mm.
Yeah. Because I mean, is
And
it
I
that
think,
simple?
yeah, I think that while critical race theory, right, is very desensitized, the
Mhm.
fact that people feel threatened by critical race theory being in schools showcases in itself the power that there is when people of color come together in this country. Because we saw the anti-belief with critical race theory and the criticism of critical race theory following the election of Donald Trump in 2020, which saw an unprecedented participation from, Black voters. States implemented the most stringent voting regulations in decades after these elections. And this is also in response to the protests against police brutality that came with George Floyd, which drew millions of people to the streets, not only in the U.S., but internationally.
Mm-hmm.
So that in itself just showcases, that it's definitely a fear dynamic.
Right.
But let's say it's taught. Let's say it's taught with the balance in its proper perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it would make a difference in this country?
You say if it was taught with its proper perspective.
In terms of the balance, if we look at it and say, well, okay, it's all right to us from where we see it, and it's okay for them in terms of where they see it, and there's a balance in the teaching of it, will it make a difference? I mean, considering everything that we've suffered in this country, do you think that being taught in the curriculum, would it make a big difference?
I mean, my personal opinion is that I'm not going to say that it shouldn't be taught. I don't know. The question is how it should be taught. I think that when we look at the way of more of the ethnic or diversity and ethnic studies, way in which probably it would be taught, something that's kind of neutral in
Yeah,
general.
exactly.
And so when you start talking about that, then I think that we kind of get the short end of the stick when it comes to just a generalization of talking about race.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I mean that's just a very broad thing. And right now we see how it was happening. We get caught up in everything that everybody else is talking about. I'm not going to get into a lot of these. Like, people are making minority groups now.
Mm.
They're making, people. You're going to be, look, I mean, so there's people who are making choices, and when they make the choice, then they put themselves in a category based upon the choices that they make.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden now they're victims
Hmm.
based upon those choices.
Yeah.
And so now you can't. So now we're living in a society where people are way too sensitive.
Yeah,
You
I
see what I'm
agree.
saying?
Yeah.
And they're too sensitive about things that they don't have a right to be sensitive about.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now that's what the subject's going to be
Hmm.
about. Everybody now all of a sudden is a minority.
Yeah. Yep.
You see what I mean? You can choose it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll pick something.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, now you say something about them that you get canceled.
Yep.
You see what I mean? So, and that's what
True.
and ultimately, my fear is that's what the class is going to be about.
Hmm.
Like, I've made a choice, and I want to be called, like,
Yeah. Be careful.
without, yeah, you gotta be careful. I want to be called this or
Yeah.
called that, or you call
Yeah.
me whatever. You can't refer to me as something. Now everybody's protected.
Exactly.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And now there we go. I mean, that's my belief because they're getting more play and more attention, and it basically uh makes the real issues insignificant,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I mean, my thing is, I'm not trying to teach my children and my grandchildren to be victims.
Mm.
That's not my objective, right? My objective is to teach my children and my grandchildren to, because I don't feel like I'm a victim at
Mm.
all.
Mhm.
That's the way I feel. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm not a victim because I understand my greatness.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And the most important thing is that what we have to do is, if you understand your greatness, then I don't want to be anybody else other than who I am.
Correct.
Not 1 minute. There's not a day that I wake up and I look in the mirror and say, "Man, I wish I was somebody else." I
Yeah.
don't feel that way. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Nor do I want anybody necessarily to feel sorry for me. But I do want you to recognize how great I am, right? Because everybody goes after the champ.
Yep.
Nobody goes after the challenger, right? And so you see what I mean? And I think that basically a lot of what we have to do is not about people, but understanding where our values went. That's important.
Yeah.
Values is important because you can. I mean,
Yeah.
otherwise it's not. And then let's just use this analysis. Let's just say that, and I've used this analysis before.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that some terrible people did some terrible things to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they continue to be terrible people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, do I want to be, what is my objective? Is my objective to say, well, I don't want to be this person. I want to be a terrible person.
No.
You understand where I'm
Yeah,
going
I see
with
what
it?
you're going. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that basically we have to be careful about what we're, and that's the fear. The
Yeah.
fear is that you see how terrible I was, so now you're gonna be terrible too. Is that
Yeah.
your objective?
So if you can't beat them, join them in a sense.
Well, if you can't beat them, do what
Yeah.
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you know, but that's just my how I look at things,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and that's just kind of my. I mean, I love Black History Month. I think we should celebrate back Black History Month and Black History Year.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like for it to be more of cultural thing. I
Yeah.
think that instead of recognize as individuals, I think that we need to use it as an opportunity to recognize not only the excellence of individuals, but the excellence of things that people have done, in the community. It's just like Black Wall Street.
Yeah.
We don't know individual names of those people in Black Wall Street,
Yeah.
who they were. So why don't we take an opportunity to look at who these people were and
Yeah.
what they did and their accomplishments?
While they're still living,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
like you say, give them their roses while they're still living, and recognize them.
So
Yeah.
sometimes what's wrong? I mean, some of the greatest people in our community are the ones who are just living down the street from us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
True.
You see what I mean?
Correct.
They're
Yeah.
educators,
Yeah.
they're law enforcement officers,
Yeah.
they're serving in the military.
Mm-hmm.
They are, work for the county, the city, the state. They own
Mhm.
businesses.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
And it could be just
True.
a regular neighbor down the street who
Right.
looks out for the kids. You always, see her look out for the kids, or, just a good neighbor.
And why don't we want to be like them?
Mhm.
You see what I mean?
Yeah. Got you.
And that when I was a kid, that's who I admired. I admired the guy that I admired those men that did what
Mhm.
they. I was an only child, and I was raised in a single parent household, but I admired those men who did. When I was married, got married 37 years ago, I knew what I was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? Just watching my grandfather, who was a janitor, he was my hero. and he cleaned law offices. And guess what? What do I do for a living? I
You
own
have
the
your
I
Yeah.
own
own the
law
law
office.
office, right?
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
see what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are the stories that we need to tell.
Yeah.
That he was a great man. He was a great father. He got up every day and he went to work. He never complained. And he told me something that I'll never forget. He says, "You don't eat because you're hungry. You eat what you catch.
Mm.
Nobody owes you nothing, right?
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You know.
So that's the dream.
Hmm. You,
Yeah.
it goes back to what you were saying when you was talking about the inventors showing. You see that snippet out of their life, but you don't see the things that they do behind the scenes, so to speak.
Hmm.
And that's what matters more. What type of individual they are.
Hmm.
They can be a good basketball player, but at the same time, how many basketball players we see that catches cases and
Hmm.
get caught, and all type of stuff, whatever they do.
Hmm.
But it reminds me of a quote that I just seen from Anthony Davis off the Lakers just recently
Hmm.
when they wanted him to respond to one of his former teammates. He said, what do you think about this dude? He said, well, I reserve my energy to talk about my three kids.
Hmm.
Wow.
Right.
He didn't want to talk about the hype that was going on. He
Hmm.
said, I want to talk about my kids. These my kids.
Hmm.
And so that just spoke volume to, I don't want to get caught up in this mess because I got too many more responsibilities that's greater than what you're talking about at this moment.
Right.
So in that, and I took away from that this is a family man.
Hmm.
This is somebody, taking care of his children,
Hmm.
so like you say, it's those type of individuals that are home, that are doing what they supposed to do
Hmm.
as men, and living up
And
to what,
women.
yeah, and women that's living up to, what they
Hmm.
supposed to live up to.
Right.
That should be the example.
Right. That is that. And then what happens is that basically, we kind of, you know, those people, we forget about the values of those who put us in these privileged positions. And it's like we don't want to be like them.
Hmm.
You see what I mean? But they really
Mhm.
they're the foundation of the community.
Yeah.
They're foundation of the culture. And there's so much greatness in that we just overlook it.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Hmm.
You know, so anytime when you look at a culture, the one thing that you want to look at is you look at the way the community treats its elders, and you look
Hmm.
at the way the community treats its children,
Correct.
and that lets you know. And those are the things that you have to focus on: your elders and your children.
Children. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
that's one of the things that we have to be very cognizant of. And then we talk about what we've done. Like, yeah, I know there's great inventors and scientists and
Hmm.
all this other stuff, but there's just great men, and we don't give them the recognition that they deserve.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the ones we should put on the pedestal. You see?
That's so true.
Yeah.
And I
Have
think
those
it's this
awards.
very nature of like deviating from our value system that this country celebrates
Hmm.
because they want us tired. They don't
Hmm.
want us thinking about our values.
Hmm.
They don't want us thinking about our family.
Hmm.
Why? Because there's power in that structure.
Right.
There's
Hmm.
power in having a man and a woman united to be able to, bring the bread,
Right.
and also very culturally aware of who they are and rooted in their vision and their mission.
Right.
Hmm.
And that's what they don't want.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing when you look at the export, what we export in this country, in our culture. I
Hmm.
mean, you can go anywhere in the world, and I guarantee you're going to see something that comes out of our what we consider to be our culture,
Oh yeah.
emulating us.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Hmm.
And when I say us, I'm just the African American community in America. But what are they emulating?
Yeah.
You see what I'm
Exactly.
saying?
Yeah.
And what are we showing them? They have no problem with that. You see what I mean?
Hmm.
And somebody controls that. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, another thing too. I mean, when you sit there and you think about the international aspect of Malcolm,
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at a time where we didn't have social media, he was going international.
Yeah, was.
Can you what if that was the standard of what people saw us in the world?
You
Mm-hmm.
know, and so I think that it's very, and it goes back to, and I'm gonna go back over what you said, as far as like giving people their roses,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's, although you say, History Month, Black History Month, I think, like you said, I think those people that are still living has to be included in that.
Mm-hmm.
Not just saying just only individuals that was in history
Mm-hmm.
that made great contributions, but I think the people that are making contributions right now should be highlighted,
Mm-hmm.
because it's I think it's a lot more effective when
2 minutes.
people that are
No, 2
living,
minutes.
that are doing the work,
Mm-hmm.
and they can exceed that example, in full, in 4K, they can see it right now today, because these people are still living amongst us.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There could be Black Values Month
Yeah.
where we recognize the values
Mm-hmm.
and highlight those issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that doesn't come. I mean, when we put somebody on the pedestal, it always has to be someone that is in a superior, or somebody, or in a position that's being co-signed by somebody outside of our community. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of us co-signing our own, like I said, we got all kinds of people who deserve to be recognized. And if we take that time to recognize their greatness and the things that they've done, then I think that and we should do it on this show. I mean, sometimes we should be able to find somebody who's just a person who does the things that they do, to have them on the show and highlight them
And highlight. Correct.
for
Mhm.
basically the just doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Because somebody's watching you,
Yeah.
whether you believe it or not. If you're young, somebody, you would be surprised. Because I know that for me, in as a young man, I'm sure those men probably thought, why is this little kid sitting here watching me,
You're on board.
doing something, or
Yeah.
watching me, wash my car, or doing something at the house, or mowing my lawn.
Yeah.
Because I was in awe of him just being a man. You see what I mean? And somebody watches you. Same way with women.
Yeah.
There's somebody's just watching you, and you just never know. Or your own children watching you.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Exactly.
You're touching somebody.
Correct.
Or even the way you take care of your children. Somebody watches that.
Yeah.
It might just be in the grocery store.
Yeah.
But at any rate, we ran out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my.
I know. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And again, happy Black History Month. We'll see you next week, same time, same place, same channel. And on behalf of the Justice Watch crew, until next week, stay blessed.
Stay blessed.
You're on board KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 AM. The station that leaves no listener behind.
NBC News Radio. I'm Chris Coraggio. An official with the Environmental Protection Agency is telling people in East Palestine, Ohio, that the air quality there is acceptable.
I continue to be pleased that there have been no exceedances for residential air quality standards.